Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am bringing you another huge book haul, because you know how we do here. This is a big book haul kind of channel because acquiring books makes the dopamine fire, you know, it is what it is. So no shame, we love books here. Happy to have them in my collection. So I'm going to show you what I got. I have a collection of new books and secondhand books. The bulk of it is secondhand. I've also got Xanthi here today, sitting at the back. She may or may not stay with us. We'll see how we do. Okay, so I'm going to start with the new books. We're going to go into, starting with fiction, one non-fiction new book. And I'm going to tell you about the non-fiction second-hand books, a few classics that I picked up, and then the rest of the fiction that was second-hand. So lots to talk about. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's get straight into it. The first book that I'm going to show you today is With Love from Cold World by Alicia Thompson. I cannot remember who I heard talking about this, but it was someone either on Bookstagram or BookTube, BookTok. Somebody was talking about this book. It sounded interesting to me, so I picked it up. So the basic premise of this book is we've got two characters called Lauren and Asa, I think it is, ASA, and they work at a place called Cold World, which is like a touristy winter wonderland in Florida. Their boss asks them to put a proposal together about how they can get some more revenue into the place, and they become rivals, I guess, and probably lovers, I'm guessing. It's a workplace romance. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It was a good price online, so I picked it up after I heard somebody talking about it who I just can't remember who. So if it was you, let me know. But yeah, looking forward to reading this workplace romance at some point when I need a romance in my life. Okay, the next new book that I picked up is this one, which has been on my wish list for some time. I can't remember who I heard talking about it, but I was in an independent book shop that I like to visit sometimes, and they had it on the shelf, so I decided to pick it up. It's called Happy Hour by Marlowe, Granados, and from the synopsis of this book, it reminds me of the vague plot of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Luce. So yeah, this could be kind of like a modern day version of that, but let's have a look. So we follow Isa and her friend Gala, but I believe it's told from the perspective of Isa. And they are in their early 20s. They arrive in New York City looking for adventure. By day they do sell clothes at the market and do other kind of odd casual work that they can get because they have no money, they're broke, but at night they're rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous. So it's sort of this like double life really of glamour and glitz that they're living in New York City as kind of long-term tourists, I guess you could say. So yeah, it sounded like fun and sounded like from what I've heard, like a really interesting narrator, so that's why I decided to pick it up. The next book that I picked up was based on, people were talking about this one, it's shortlisted I believe for the Booker Prize this year. It's called Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. I've heard a few people talk about it and it sounded interesting to me from what different people were saying. So I decided to pick it up. It's a very short novel. It says, a beautiful and moving first novel about grief, sisterhood, and a teenage girl's struggle to transcend herself. So it just sounded really fascinating. And I do like a short literary book because it sort of gives you that opportunity to like deep dive without it feeling too onerous. So that's why I've picked this one up. Another Booker Prize, I believe. This one I didn't think I don't think made it to the shortlist, but it was on the long list. Elaine Feeney's How to Build a Boat. I heard Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot recommend this one, so that was the reason I picked it up. I also found it at a decent price. But essentially, we've got a main character called Jamie O'Neill. I'm just going to read a little bit of the blurb to you. Who loves the colour red. He also loves tall trees, patterns, rains that come with wind, the curvature of many objects, books with dust jackets, cats, rivers, and Edgar Allan Poe. At age 13, there are two things he especially wants in life: to build a perpetual motion machine and to connect with his mother Noelle, who died when he was born. In his mind, these things are intimately linked, and at his new school, where all else is disorientating and overwhelming, he finds two people who might just be able to help him. So that one sounded really interesting, and based on the strength of Scott's recommendation, I picked this one up. This one's a bit of a random one that had been on my wish list and I just found it at a good price. It's called Murder at Mallowan Hall by Colleen Cambridge, and this is an Agatha Christie adjacent book. So in this book we follow Phillida Bright, who is the housekeeper at Mallowan Hall, which is the home of Max Mallowan and his wife Agatha Christie. So Phillida discovers a body in the library and decides to follow in the footsteps of Agatha Christie's characters and become a bit of an amateur sleuth to get to the bottom of the mystery of who this murdered person is and who done it. So yeah, it just sounded really fun. So I, as I said, found it at a good price, so I picked it up. The next book I came across when I was visiting an independent bookshop that I occasionally visit because I was on a trip, and it is Violet Kelly and the Jade Owl by Fiona Britton. Now, I didn't know anything about this. I've never heard anyone talking about this one, but the cover obviously drew me in, and also then when I read the blurb, which tells me that it's set in Sydney in the 1930s, in the sort of Darlinghurst, King's Cross, Surrey Hills, Paddington area, which it was rife with kind of like crime and all sorts of things going on. It's a period of history and place that I'm really interested in. I was already, that's 2 points. Cool cover, a setting that I know I'm going to like, but let me read a little bit of the blurb to you and that will tell you why I picked it up in the end. So Sydney, 1930. In a well-heeled corner of Paddington, just a short distance from the razor gangs of Darlinghurst and King's Cross, sits La Maison de Fleur, an upscale brothel run by the indomitable Madame. The star of La Maison is Violet Kelly, beautiful, clever, and determined to make something of herself in a world that has already taken so much. When a former associate of Madame's emerges to claim a long-owed favour involving a kidnapped girl and an ancient curse, Violet is drawn into a risky game of cat and mouse that takes her from dangerous underworld dealings to raucous parties, to untold stories about her own past, and eventually right into the heart of La Maison de Fleur. But how much is she willing to risk to save her friends, her home, and the life she's come to love? And will it be enough? So it just sounded really fun. The setting is a setting I like, as I said, and I had to pick it up. Very exciting. Okay, I spoke about this next book very briefly without naming it in my last video, which was my September wrap-up. And it's a book that I purchased based on the audiobook narrator of a different book, and then I looked up other books that this narrator had narrated, and this was the only other one. So the audiobook narrator's name is Airlie Dodds. She did a fantastic job on Girl in a Pink Dress by Kylie Needham. I'll link to my video where I reviewed that book up above. But this book is called Compulsion by Kate Scott. The audiobook is also narrated by the same narrator. Let me tell you a little bit about this one. So Lucy is the editor of a music magazine, and she is partying hard with the other bright young things, but her life becomes a bit chaotic, and so she retreats to a remote seaside town where she grew up to start over. And it says, Compulsion is a razor-sharp debut about the transcendence of new highs, the allure of new lows, and the relentless power of our obsessions. Music, sex, food, drugs, fashion, and nature coalesce to overwhelm the senses on every page. So this just sounded fascinating as well. So that was, another reason to pick it up. So I got myself a copy. Okay, that's the fiction. I have one non-fiction new book to show you, and that is this one, which I also picked up at an independent bookstore that I was visiting. It's called Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer. This one, I'm sure I did hear about somebody talking about it, which is why it was on my wish list. It's been on my wish list for a little while, and then I came across it in a store, so I picked it up. The question is, what do we do with the art of monstrous men? Can we love the work of Roman Polanski and Michael Jackson, Hemingway and Picasso? Should we love it? Does genius deserve special dispensation? What makes women artists monstrous? And what should we do with beauty and with our unruly feelings about it? Claire Dederer explores these questions and our relationships with the artist whose behaviour disrupts our ability to understand the work on its own terms. She interrogates her own responses and behaviour, and she pushes the fan and the reader to do the same. The call number for this one is 700.103. It just sounded like a fascinating premise and something that I would like to hear someone's thoughts on. It's something that I've thought about myself. We've had various artists and creators come out in recent times as having appalling behaviour, doing appalling things, having appalling opinions about certain things, and it does sometimes make it hard to enjoy their creations on their own merits, because we know that something about the creator that makes us feel a particular way. So this explores that, and I'm interested to read more about it. Okay, let's move into the secondhand finds now. So I love secondhand shopping. I love the hunt. I love finding interesting things, either that I've not heard of or from my wish list, or that I've heard other people talking about that sound really interesting. So let me show you what I picked up, first of all, in non-fiction. I'm going to show you these two books together because they're part of a set. I believe there are 6 books in this series, which is called First Knowledges, and it's edited by Margot Neal. But the ones that I picked up were Country, Future Fire, Future Farming by Bill Gammage and Bruce Pascoe. The call number for that one is 338.10994. And the other one I picked up was Design, Building on Country by Alison Page and Paul Memmott. And the call number for that one is 305.89915. These two books from this series I just am interested in. So when I didn't know this series existed, so when I found these, I picked them up. And depending on how I feel after I've had a look at them, I might end up trying to find the rest of the series as well. But yeah, very excited to find those at Lifeline Books. I love the Lifeline. So good. Okay, the next one that I picked up quite recently, and it is Black Teacher by Beryl Gilroy. This copy's a little bit, the spine's a bit broken and it's a little bit battered, but it's not too bad. Essentially, the call number for this one is 371.10092. So essentially, Black Teacher came out quite some time ago. So it was initially published in 1976, but she was born in 1924 in British Guiana, and this is a memoir that she published, as I said, back in 1976. And it says, on arriving in London in 1952, her dream was to teach. Little did she expect the colour bar to block her from jobs in schools. Instead, she found herself serving as a lady's maid to an empire-loving aristocrat, I should say, working amidst the East End's bomb sites and raising 2 children in suburbia. But despite all the odds, she eventually rose to become one of the first black head teachers in Britain, and her memoir is a rediscovered classic. So I was excited to find a copy of this. People were talking about this a couple of years ago on BookTube, so yeah, based on that, what I'd heard at the time, I was happy to find this one. Okay, this one's got a little bit more of a controversial title. It's called Bitch, A Revolutionary Guide to Sex, Evolution and the Female Animal by Lucy Cooke. This, again, the call number for this one is 591.56. And it says, what does it mean to be female? Mother, carer, The weaker sex, think again. Our perception of the animal kingdom has been warped by centuries of sexist thinking, but in the last few decades a revolution has been brewing in zoology and evolutionary biology. Lucy Cooke introduces us to a riotous cast of animals and the scientists studying them, who are redefining not just the female of the species, but the very forces that shape evolution. The bitches in Bitch overturn outdated binary expectations of bodies, brains, biology and behaviour. Lucy Cooke tells a fresh scientific story about sex, sexual identity and sexuality in animals, one that reveals the power of cultural bias to obscure biological truth. So it just sounds like a fascinating book. I can't remember who I heard talking about this, but it has been on my wish list for a while, so I was very excited to find a copy secondhand. And the last of the non-fiction books was this one. This one I picked up in a little free library and it's in excellent condition. It's called Diary of a Tuscan Bookshop by Alba Donati. The call number is 381.45002092. And this one is all about a woman called Alba who moves from Florence, where she is a book publicist leading a hectic life, but she returns to a small Tuscan village where she grew up to open a bookshop, leaving that hectic life behind. And it says, Alba's enterprise seemed doomed from day one, but it surprisingly sparked the enthusiasm of many across Tuscany and beyond. And after surviving a fire and the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, the bookshop on the hill soon became a refuge and beacon for an ever-growing community of readers. So this just sounded like an interesting memoir. It's also a beautiful book with gold foil on the front cover, which we always love here. So yeah, I picked it up for free in a little free library. Bargain! Okay, the next section of my secondhand finds that I'm going to show you are the classics. I'm not going to talk about these too much. I'm just going to show you what I got. So I got 2 Colette books. I'm a bit of a Colette fan. So the ones that I got, so I already own the, what are they called? Claudine. So I already own the Claudine books by Colette. But I found these ones secondhand. So this one is The Other Woman, Collected Stories, and Cherie and the Last of Cherie, which I'm adding to my collection. I got this little Penguin Modern Classics with the sort of duck egg blue spine. Blue? Yeah, blue. It's Chess by Stefan Zweig. So that's that one. And then I got 3 of the vintage red spines. I got Tender is the Night by Fitzgerald. I got The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. And I got the Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood, which has, I think, a gorgeous cover. So those were the classics that I picked up in my secondhand travels this month, and I'm adding those to my classics collection. Okay, let's talk about the fiction, the secondhand fiction. So the first 2 books from the secondhand fiction I'm going to show you are 2 that I have already read. So one of them is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I read this last year. Actually, I read them both in the same month. I read them both in September. So I will link the video up above with my reviews of these 2 books. So if you want to hear more about it. But in this book, we follow Ziamara, who is a high schooler from Harlem, who discovers her voice through poetry. This is a 5-star read for me. And this one I gave 4.5 stars. And this is called After Story by Larissa Berendt. And in this one we follow an Indigenous lawyer called Jasmine, who decides to take her mother Della on a tour of England's most revered literary sites. Jasmine hopes it will bring them closer together and help them reconcile the past. 25 years earlier, the disappearance of Jasmine's older sister devastated their tight-knit community. This tragedy returns to haunt Jasmine and Della when another child mysteriously goes missing on Hampstead Heath. And as Jasmine immerses herself in the world of her literary idols, including Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, and Virginia Woolf, Della is inspired to rediscover the wisdom of her own culture and storytelling. And this is told in alternating perspectives from Jasmine and Della, and it was a lovely book. So yeah, those 2 I picked up copies of because I did already have a copy of this one, but I wanted to have another one that I could give away because I found it really cheap. So I picked it up. And this one I did not have a copy of, so now I do. Very exciting. Okay, then we're on to ones that I have not read. The first one to show you is this one, When Things Are Alive, They Hum by Hannah Bent. I mentioned Scott before from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and this was his favourite, at least at the halfway mark of this year, was his favourite book that he read this year. So this is all about a woman called Marlowe, and her sister Harper has Down syndrome and a congenital heart disorder. And Marlowe lives abroad but is called back because Harper's heart is failing, but she's being denied a heart transplant due to her Down syndrome. So it's sort of looking at all of the issues that kind of surround that, as well as like the will of the person who has the heart issue as well, because I believe she doesn't actually want a heart transplant. So yeah, it's sort of exploring all of that, and I'm very excited to read this one at some point. The next one that I picked up was Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This one I believe was on, it says here it's shortlisted for the 2021 Booker Prize, but I think it was also shortlisted, or at least longlisted, for the Women's Prize that year. So this one is all about a woman called Marion Graves, who is an explorer, and she's on the verge of fulfilling her greatest ambition to circumnavigate the globe from pole to pole when she crash lands in a perilous wilderness of ice. Over half a century later, troubled film star Hadley Baxter is drawn inexorably to play the enigmatic pilot on screen. It is a role that will lead her to an unexpected discovery, throwing fresh and spellbinding light on the story of the unknowable Marion Graves. So it sounds good. It's very thick, but this book is nice and floppy, so I think I'll enjoy reading it when I finally do get to it, but I don't know how soon I'm going to get to it. The next one is The Submerged Cathedral by Charlotte Wood. Charlotte Wood might be better known to people on the basis of her more recent novels that she's published. So in 2021 she published The Luminous Solution, there's The Weekend from 2019, The Writer's Room in 2016, and The Natural Way of Things in 2015. This is a backlist title. This one was published in 2004. So this is all about Jocelyn and Martin, who have their own lives, but when they meet they fall in love. And this novel tracks their relationship over several decades and explores the decisions and changes that occur over that time. So I believe it's very character driven, and just interested to read. Charlotte Wood is an author who I've never read before, but I own several of her books, so I really need to get on to reading at least one of them, so I know whether it's like she's going to be an author for me or not. But that one also, the cover is just beautiful. So yeah, I picked it up secondhand. The next one is from an author that I have read before, and this is Lauren Groff, who wrote Matrix, that she published a couple of years ago. She has a brand new book out at the moment that I've got my eye on as well, but this is a backlist title from her. It's called The Monsters of Templeton, and it says it was shortlisted for the Orange Broadband Award for New Writers in 2008. I didn't know this book existed, but it was written quite some time ago. So it says, Willie Cooper arrives on the doorstep of her ancestral home in Templeton, New York, in the wake of a disastrous affair with her much older married archaeology professor. That same day, the discovery of a prehistoric monster in the lake brings a media frenzy to the quiet, picture-perfect town her ancestors founded. Smarting from a broken heart, Willie then learns that the story her mother had always told her about her father has all been a lie. He wasn't the one-night stand V had led her to imagine, but someone else entirely. As Willie puts her archaeological skills to work, digging for the truth about her lineage, a chorus of voices from the town's past rise up around her to tell their sides of the story. Dark secrets come to light, past and present blur, old mysteries are finally put to rest, and the surprising truth about more than one monster is revealed. So that's The Monsters of Templeton. I'm looking forward to reading that one because, as I said, I really loved Matrix that I read last year or the year before. It was really, really good book for me. The next one that I picked up, I got from someone on Facebook Marketplace that was selling it. It's Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This one is all about a woman called Tova, who meets Marcellus, a giant Pacific octopus that's living at the Sour Bay Aquarium where she works at night as a cleaner. And they form a friendship, and there's some like mysterious stuff. And I must say, from what I can tell, Marcellus is very, very intelligent and is trying very hard to communicate some information that he knows about Tova's son, who mysteriously vanished on a boat some years ago. So yeah, this should be a really interesting read. Another one from a little free library. This time my husband found this one and he was like, does this look interesting to you? And I was like, yes, please. So he picked that one up for me. It's Diary of a Void by Emi Iyagi. Now, this one is all about a woman called Ms. Shibata who pretends to be pregnant to get out of doing menial tasks at work, like making coffee for people because she can't stand the smell. But then she has to keep that ruse up and then work out how she's going to proceed after 9 months. So this one just sounded really fascinating to me, about this sort of like blurred lines between this lie and reality, and like how she's gonna manage that. Right, let's have a look. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to go. The next one that I've got is called After Sappho by Selby Wynne Schwartz. This one is all about so Sappho being the Sapphic poet. So this is told in a series of cascading vignettes featuring a multitude of voices. After Sappho reimagines the lives of a brilliant group of feminist Saphists, artists and writers in the late 19th and early 20th century as they battle for liberation, justice and control over their own lives. So that one sounded really fascinating to me, although I hadn't heard of it before. The cover for this one is just something else. It's Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. This was all over BookTube a while back, and so I'm sure you've all heard of it. But it's all about, so I believe it's told from the perspective of a woman whose husband is having and is being accused of inappropriate relationships with his students. So let me tell you about it. When I was a child, I loved old men, and I could tell that they also loved me. Thus does the deliciously incisive narrator of this provocative and razor-sharp novel introduce herself. She is a popular English professor whose husband, a charismatic teacher at the same small American college, is under investigation for his inappropriate relationships with his former students. The couple have long had a mutual understanding when it comes to their extramarital pursuits, but with these new allegations, life has become far less comfortable for them both, and when our narrator becomes increasingly infatuated with Vladimir, a celebrated married young novelist who's just arrived on campus, their tinderbox world comes dangerously close to exploding. I love this. It makes it look like it's like a smutty, like Mills and Boon novel, which I know it isn't, but yeah, I love this. Love the cover. Okay, the next book that I've got to show you is Son of Sin by Omar Saker. I recently, in my September wrap-up, talked about the book, the poetry collection of Omar Saker's that I read. So after I've read that, I came across this novel secondhand and picked it up because of the strength of that poetry collection. And his beautiful writing. So this is all about a character called Jamal, who is a young queer Muslim man living in Western Sydney. He's torn between faith and fear, gossip and gospel, family and friendship. So yeah, this I'm interested in just based on the author. Also, it's a really cool cover, and I didn't realise from seeing this cover that it was also textured. So that's going to be nice while I'm reading it to be able to touch the texture of the snake. It's very cool. So yeah, that's Son of Sin. I also picked up this one, Sultan Skin, which rhymes with Son of Sin. Okay. So this one is by Eliza Henry Jonas, and it says, grief-stricken over the loss of her husband, Luda Managan and her two teenaged children tried to make a home for themselves on a collection of harsh and haunted Scottish islands. Luda, a photographer, is mesmerised by the extraordinary magic of the islands and soon finds herself condemned by the local community after publishing images documenting the death of a local child. Alienated, Luda turns her attention to records from the 17th century Ireland witch hunts and the fragmented life stories of the executed women. So that's what this is all about. Sounds really interesting, so that's why I picked it up. Who to go? We're almost there. This one is The Sun Walks Down by Fiona McFarlane. I heard Natalie Marie talking about this month or two ago, and so that's why when I saw it I was like, oh, that's that book that she was talking about that she really enjoyed. So it says, in September 1883 the South Australian town of Fairlie huddles under strange vivid sunsets. 6-year-old Denny Wallace has gone missing during a dust storm, and the whole town is intent on finding him. As they search the desert and mountains for the lost child, the residents of Fairlie, newlyweds, landowners, farmers, mothers, artists, Indigenous trackers, cameleers, children, school teachers, widows, maids, policemen, explore their own relationships with the complex landscape and unsettling history of the Flinders Ranges. So this is an Australian author, and yeah, so based on Natalie Marie's recommendation, that's why we're here. Okay, and the last one to show you is another beautiful gold foil situation. This is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which is a beautiful, beautiful colour. I love the colour of this. I love it with the gold foil. It's just absolutely beautiful. So this one is set in Texas in 1934. Elsa Martinelli has finally found the life she'd yearned for, a family, a home, and a farm on the Great Plains. But when drought threatens all that she and her community hold dear, Elsa's world is shattered to the winds. Fearful of the future, when Elsa wakes to find her husband has fled, she is forced to make the most agonizing decision of her life: fight for the land she loves, or take her beloved children, Loretta and Aunt, west to California in search of a better life. So it sounds like an interesting book, but it's also just beautiful. So it's mostly a cover buy, to be honest. Okay, that's my haul for this month. A lot of books that I've picked up. But yeah, as I say, I just love a secondhand book hunt. It's something that I enjoy so much, and I get to find all of these amazing books that I either might not have ever heard of. So there's like the serendipity aspect of finding something you've never heard of, or it's a book that I have heard of and I'm interested in, and I find it secondhand, so it doesn't cost me as much as buying it firsthand. I guess that's the opposite of secondhand. New is what I meant to say. Buying it new. So yeah, I'm very excited to have all of these books to add to my collection as I sort of pull together to curate, as it were, a collection of books that I have at my fingertips to pick up at any time. So yeah, let's see how long it takes me to get to them though, hey? All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this book haul, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.